Ethan, get out of there right now! The traitor is sitting at your own family table!
The applause ended the moment the lawyer closed the black folder. Silence swallowed the conference room. 37 pairs of eyes stared at me as though I had just confessed to a crime instead of signing away everything I had built. My older brother, Adrian, broke the silence first. "What game are you playing now, Ethan?" His voice echoed against the glass walls overlooking the city. Behind him sat our board of directors, my aunt, 2 cousins, and executives whose careers I had quietly protected for years. I pushed the signed documents toward the lawyer. "No game. You just transferred your voting rights." "Yes." "You resigned as chief operating officer." "Yes." "You gave up every claim to Grandridge Holdings." "Yes." He laughed, but sounded forced. "You're trying to make us panic." I looked around the room. Faces I had defended. People whose scandals I had buried. Executives whose disastrous investments I had personally corrected before investors ever noticed. Family members who believed the company survived because our late father had built an empire. None of them knew how many nights I'd spent keeping that empire from collapsing. "I've already signed." The lawyer cleared his throat. "The documents are legally binding." The room erupted. "You can't leave. This company needs you." "What about the transition?" I leaned back calmly. "You'll manage." My aunt slammed her hand on the table. "You've always been selfish." The accusation almost made me smile. Selfish. For 12 years, I had skipped birthdays, canceled vacations, and worked until sunrise because someone else had made another catastrophic mistake. Every time the company nearly drowned, I became the invisible hand that kept it afloat. Not once had anyone thank me. Not once. Adrian folded his arms. "You'll come crawling back in a week." "I won't." "You always do." I met his eyes. "No." He frowned. Something in my voice unsettled him. For the first time in years, I wasn't asking permission. I wasn't negotiating. I wasn't fixing another crisis. I simply stood. "I wish you all the success you believe you've earned." Someone scoffed. Someone laughed. Someone muttered, "Drama." None of them noticed our legal advisor staring at me with unusual concern. He knew. He had seen the evidence I had refused to show anyone. Not because I wanted revenge, because they had never wanted the truth. Outside, rain hammered against the marble entrance. My phone vibrated. Unknown number. I answered. "Ethan." The familiar female voice sent a chill through me. "Lena, you finally left. You knew. I hoped you would." There was hesitation on the other end. I found something. My grip tightened. "What?" "Not over the phone." My heartbeat quickened. "You sound frightened." "I am." A pause. "They're not failing because they're unlucky." Cold rain soaked my shoulders. "What do you mean?" "I have proof someone inside your family has been destroying the company for years." The call ended. I stood frozen beneath the gray sky. Behind me, laughter echoed from the executive floor. They were already celebrating my departure. None of them knew someone had been quietly burning the foundation beneath their feet. And for the first time, it was no longer my responsibility to save them. That evening, my apartment felt unfamiliar. No company emails. No emergency meetings. No midnight calls demanding impossible solutions. The silence should have felt peaceful. Instead, it felt dangerous. A knock came at exactly 9. 3 slow knocks. Lena entered carrying a sealed envelope. She didn't hug me. Didn't smile. She looked exhausted. "I almost didn't come. You said you found proof." She placed the envelope on the table without sitting. I was followed. Every muscle in my body tightened. "By who?" "I don't know." She shook her head. "But someone searched my office yesterday." "What office?" "The internal audit department." That made my stomach sink. Internal audits weren't public. Someone had known exactly where to look. Lena slowly opened the envelope. Inside were printed bank transfers, construction invoices, supplier contracts, executive approvals. At first glance, they looked ordinary. Then I saw the signatures. Forged. Not all of them. Just enough. Small changes. Tiny approvals. Millions disappearing one transaction at a time that I spread the papers across the dining table. The pattern emerged within minutes. Every fraudulent payment passed through 3 departments before reaching an offshore account. Each department blamed the next. Each audit closed without conclusions. Someone had designed the system to look like ordinary incompetence. Lena watched my face carefully. You see it. I do. She lowered herself into a chair. I spent 8 months trying to prove it. Why didn't you tell me earlier? I tried. She laughed bitterly. You were always putting out another fire. She wasn't wrong. Whenever another division failed, I stepped in. Whenever investors demanded answers, I gave them confidence. Whenever Adrian made reckless promises, I somehow made them reality. In doing so, I become the perfect distraction. While everyone looked at me to solve today's crisis, nobody asked why there was always another crisis tomorrow. Who benefits? I asked. I don't know. Someone does. She nodded. But they're careful. My phone buzzed again. Adrian. I let it ring. Again. Then a message arrived. Stop acting like a child. Come back tomorrow. I locked the screen without replying. Lena noticed. You're really done. I am. They'll blame you. They already have. She hesitated. Will you defend yourself? I looked at the rain streaking across the window. No. She frowned. Why? Because they never believed me when I was standing beside them. I gathered the papers back into the envelope. If I force the truth on people determined to ignore it, they'll only accuse me of manipulation. So I'll walk away. A strange expression crossed her face. Relief. Respect. Maybe both. 3 days later, the financial news exploded. Grand Ridge Holdings delays quarterly earnings report. Analysts called it unusual. Investors called it concerning. Inside the company, panic spread. Without me coordinating departments, projects stopped communicating. Without me smoothing negotiations, suppliers began demanding overdue payments. Without me catching errors before board meetings, mistakes reached investors untouched. My phone rang dozens of times. Board members, executives, managers, ignored. On the 5th day, Adrian appeared outside my apartment. He looked exhausted. Dark circles framed his eyes. You've made your point. I wasn't making one. The logistics division is refusing shipments. They have contracts. They're claiming payment delays. I shrugged. You'll solve it. His jaw tightened. You know how. So do your executives. They're useless. The words escaped before he could stop himself. We both heard them. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I asked quietly, if they're useless, why did you always say I was replaceable? His expression froze. He searched for an answer. Found none. Instead, he changed the subject. Come back. No. I'll increase your shares. No. You can choose your position. No. His frustration erupted. Why are you doing this to your own family? I met his gaze without anger. I spent 12 years protecting this family. He opened his mouth. I continued. You just never noticed. His shoulders slowly dropped. For the first time, uncertainty replaced arrogance. As he turned to leave, he stopped at the doorway. Someone leaked confidential documents. My pulse skipped. What documents? Transactions. The word hit harder than I expected. They're fake, Adrian said quickly. Someone's trying to frame us. I watched him carefully. He genuinely believed it, which meant one of two things. Either he was innocent, or the real mastermind had fooled even him. The elevator doors closed behind him. At that exact moment, Lena called. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Ethan, what happened? I found the original ledger. My breath caught. And they know I have it. A loud crash echoed through the phone. Then the line went dead. The disconnected call echoed in my ear long after the screen went dark. Lena, nothing. I called again. Straight to voicemail. A third time. Still nothing. My keys were already in my hand before I realized I had moved. The rain hadn't stopped. It blurred the city into streaks of silver as I drove toward the apartment building where Lena lived. Every red light felt like an accusation. Too late. Too slow. The lobby door stood half open. The security desk was empty. I took the stairs 2 at a time. Her apartment door wasn't broken. It was unlocked. Lena. Silence. The living room looked almost untouched. A cup of tea sat on the coffee table, still warm enough to leave faint steam in the air. Then I noticed the floor. A broken picture frame. Papers scattered beneath the sofa. A chair overturned. Not a struggle meant to hurt. A search meant to find something. My pulse steadied instead of racing. Whoever had come here believed the ledger was still inside. That meant Lena had hidden it somewhere else. A quiet knock sounded behind me. I turned instantly. An elderly woman from across the hall stood nervously clutching her cardigan. They took her. My voice remained calm. Who? I didn't recognize them. How many? 3 men. She swallowed. They said they were police. Were they? I don't think so. She looked around the hallway before lowering her voice. Your friend slipped something under my door before they knocked. She handed me a plain brown envelope. I was too frightened to open it. I thanked her and waited until I reached my car before breaking the seal. Inside was a single USB drive. No note, no explanation, only one tiny sticker. If something happens to me. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to the office of the only person outside the family I still trusted. Marcus Hale, Grandridge Holdings' retired legal advisor. He opened the door before I could knock twice. I wondered how long it would take. You knew she'd come to me. I hoped she would. His office smelled of old books and coffee. He locked the door. No phones. I placed mine inside the metal lockbox beside his desk without asking why. He did the same. Only then did I show him the USB. Marcus frowned. Have you opened it? No. Good. He plugged it into an isolated computer that had never been connected to the internet. Folders appeared. Invoices, emails, audio recordings, financial statements. Years of them. Marcus's expression hardened with every click. This isn't embezzlement. What is it? He leaned back slowly. It's corporate sabotage. I stared at the screen. Someone had deliberately approved disastrous suppliers, canceled profitable contracts, created fake maintenance costs, purchased worthless companies through shell corporations. Every decision looked legal. Every signature had authorization. But taken together, someone had been bleeding Grandridge dry for nearly a decade. My chest tightened, so it wasn't incompetence. No. Marcus looked directly at me. It was planned. He opened another folder. This one, video footage. A parking garage. Timestamp from 8 months earlier. Lena handing a thick folder to someone whose face remained hidden beneath a hood. Then another figure entered. The hooded person fled. The newcomer bent down to collect several loose pages. The security camera caught his face for less than 2 seconds. I knew him instantly. No. Marcus didn't answer. He was my father's personal assistant. He still is. Impossible. Marcus folded his hands. Your father trusted him more than anyone. My thoughts froze. My father had died 3 years earlier. If his assistant had remained inside the company, then someone had inherited access to every confidential record Grandridge possessed, including every weakness. Across town, Grandridge Holdings held an emergency board meeting. I wasn't there. For the first time in 12 years, they faced disaster without me. According to the live financial reports, the company's stock had fallen another 9% before noon. Banks demanded explanations. Suppliers delayed shipments. Employees whispered in hallways. Inside the boardroom, Adrian slammed another report onto the table. Find the leak. The IT director swallowed nervously. We're trying. The press knows about contracts that were never public. We've checked the servers. Then check again. No one mentioned my name at first. Then my cousin Victor spoke. This started after Ethan left. The room became quiet. Adrian rubbed his temples. You think he did this? Victor shrugged. He had access. So did half this room. Victor looked away. The accusation remained hanging between them, exactly as the real culprit would have wanted. Marcus shut down the computer. We cannot release this yet. Why not? Because this proves sabotage. Isn't that enough? He shook his head. It proves someone committed crimes. But not who. I paced across the office. If we wait, Lena. We're not waiting. He reached into a filing cabinet and removed another folder. I've been investigating quietly since your father became ill. You never told me. I couldn't. Why? Because I wasn't sure who to trust. He sighed heavily. Your father asked me one final favor before he died. My footsteps stopped. Marcus rarely mentioned him. He believed someone close was betraying the company. The words settled over the room like dust. He didn't know who. No. He only knew the losses were too precise. Marcus handed me a handwritten page. It was unmistakably my father's handwriting. If anything happens before I expose the truth, protect Ethan from becoming the family's shield. My vision blurred. Shield. That single word described my entire adult life. Whenever someone failed, I stepped forward. Whenever someone lied, I repaired the damage. Without realizing it, I had become exactly what my father feared. The person sacrificed to protect everyone else. Marcus spoke softly. Your father knew they would blame you eventually. I folded the letter carefully. I won't let his warning be wasted. That evening, Adrian appeared on every financial news channel. He looked confident, too confident. Our company is experiencing temporary operational challenges. A reporter interrupted. Is it true your former COO resigned days before the crisis? Personnel changes happen. Did Ethan Cross leave because of financial misconduct? My hand tightened around the remote. Adrian hesitated, only for a second. Then he answered, We're conducting an internal review. He hadn't accused me. He also hadn't defended me. The implications spread faster than a direct allegation ever could. By midnight, my inbox overflowed. Former colleagues, journalists, anonymous messages, traitor, coward, greedy. I read every message without replying. Silence was no longer weakness. It was distance. Distance allowed people to reveal themselves. Near dawn, my phone vibrated with an unknown encrypted number. A text. She escaped. Another message followed. Warehouse 18. Come alone. Marcus reached for my arm. It's a trap. It could be. It probably is. I looked at the screen again. If Lena was alive, she had risked everything to protect evidence instead of herself. I couldn't ignore that. I have to go. Marcus nodded once. Then don't go as the man who keeps saving everyone. I looked at him. Go as the man who finally wants the truth. Warehouse 18 stood abandoned beside the old shipping docks. Fog rolled across the cracked pavement. Every step echoed inside the empty building. Lena, a weak voice answered from the darkness. Ethan, she emerged slowly. Her sleeve was torn. A bruise darkened one side of her face. But she was standing. Relief washed through me. Before I could reach her, another voice echoed through the warehouse. I'm impressed. A tall man stepped out from behind stacked cargo containers. Gray suit, silver hair, calm smile. My father's former personal assistant, Daniel Voss. He clapped once. I wondered how long it would take before you stopped protecting your family. He looked almost amused. Now perhaps we could discuss who really owns Grandridge Holdings. Daniel Voss's applause echoed through the empty warehouse. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Confidence carried farther than noise. Lena took a cautious step toward me, but Daniel raised a finger. I wouldn't. Two men emerged from the shadows behind him. Not bodyguards in tailored suits. Professionals. Their movements were disciplined, their expressions blank. Daniel smiled as if he were greeting old friends at a dinner party. Ethan, after all these years, we finally meet without your family standing between us. I kept my eyes on him. You kidnapped Lena. I invited her to return what belongs to me. You call this an invitation? He shrugged. Words are flexible. Lena's voice was hoarse. They searched everywhere. Daniel looked disappointed. She has always been stubborn. You'll never find the ledger, Lena said. Daniel chuckled. I don't need it anymore. That sentence caught my attention. If he no longer needed the ledger, then he had already accomplished something bigger. What have you done? Daniel slipped a folded newspaper from inside his coat and tossed it onto the dusty floor. The front page headline stared back at me. Grandridge Holdings faces criminal investigation. The authorities arrived at headquarters an hour ago, Daniel said pleasantly. They're innocent. They're convenient. His smile widened. There's a difference. I understood instantly. He had spent years planting enough irregularities that, once exposed, investigators would naturally suspect the board. Even if Adrian knew nothing. Even if my aunt had never signed a fraudulent transfer knowingly. The company itself had become the perfect crime scene. Daniel stepped closer. Do you know why I admired your father? I said nothing. He was intelligent enough to notice someone was stealing. Daniel's expression darkened. but not intelligent enough to realize it was happening beside him every single day. My father trusted you. Exactly. The answer landed with terrifying simplicity. Trust had been the weapon. Not force. Not threats. Trust. At Grandridge headquarters, chaos swallowed every floor. Government investigators carried sealed evidence boxes through the lobby while cameras flashed outside the entrance. Employees whispered in terrified groups. Executives avoided eye contact. Inside the boardroom, Adrian slammed both hands onto the conference table. "This is impossible," an investigator calmly replied. "The financial records suggest otherwise." Victor shifted uneasily in his chair. "I never approved those payments." The investigator opened another file. "Then why is your authorization here?" Victor stared at the signature. His face turned pale. That's mine. But I never—" He couldn't finish, because he suddenly remembered. Hundreds of digital approvals. Thousands of routine documents. Years of signing without checking. The investigator closed the folder. "We'll verify everything." For the first time, every member of my family realized something terrifying. They had trusted the system because I always checked it. Without me, no one had. Back at the warehouse, Daniel watched me carefully. "You aren't angry." "I am, but not enough. I stopped confusing anger with action a long time ago." He laughed softly. "That's why your father valued you." He circled slowly, hands behind his back. "I spent years expecting you to challenge me. You never did." "Exactly." He pointed toward Lena. "She did." Lena met my eyes. "I found discrepancies during a supplier audit." Daniel nodded. "So, I moved faster." "You kill people?" I asked quietly. His smile disappeared. "I removed obstacles." The warehouse suddenly felt colder. There it was. No more corporate games. No more counting tricks. The man in front of me wasn't simply stealing money. He believed human lives were another business expense. Daniel stopped walking. "I'll offer you something your family never did." "What?" "Freedom." I almost laughed. "You've mistaken me for someone who still wants their approval." His expression sharpened. "Walk away. I'm already gone." "No." He tilted his head. "I mean, leave this city. Forget Grandridge. Forget the evidence. And Lena, she leaves with you." Lena looked at me, waiting. Daniel spread his hands. "You disappear. I finish what I've started. Everyone wins." "No," I replied. "You lose nothing. I lose myself." Silence settled between us. Then Daniel sighed. "I was hoping you'd inherited more of your father's practicality." Instead, he nodded toward his men. Before either of them moved, the distant sound of sirens drifted across the docks. Daniel frowned. His bodyguards exchanged quick glances. Lena whispered. I activated the emergency transmitter. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Clever. He stepped backward rather than forward. Not panicked. Calculated. "You think this ends today?" He smiled again. "It doesn't." Within seconds, he disappeared through a side exit with his men, leaving nothing behind except tire tracks disappearing into the fog. I didn't chase him. Neither did Lena. Sometimes surviving the meeting mattered more than winning it. Hours later, we sat inside Marcus Hale's office. The ledger lay open between us. Unlike the digital files, this was handwritten. Dates, amounts, names, every illegal transfer, every shell company, every intermediary. Lena traced one line with her finger. "I missed this before." "What?" She pointed to recurring initials beside dozens of transactions. "CR." Marcus adjusted his glasses. "Those aren't Daniel's initials." "No, they belong to Charles Rowan." The name stirred an old memory. Grandridge's external financial consultant. A man who had attended board meetings for years without ever attracting attention. Marcus looked grim. Daniel couldn't have done this alone. Rowan managed the offshore structures, Lena whispered, and Daniel controlled internal access. I leaned back slowly. They built the perfect partnership. One invisible outside the company, one invisible inside it. Suddenly, another realization struck me. They're still missing something. Marcus looked up. The original ownership certificates. He nodded. My thoughts exactly. Without them, Daniel could destroy Grandridge. But he couldn't quietly take control of its remaining assets, which meant he would have to make one final move. And that was when he would become vulnerable. That evening, every major news channel replayed the same shocking footage. Adrian leaving company headquarters surrounded by reporters. Did your brother steal from Grandridge? Is Ethan Cross under investigation? Are you resigning? For the first time in years, Adrian didn't answer immediately. His face looked older, more tired. Finally, he said quietly, "My brother spent 12 years fixing problems the rest of us ignored." The reporters fell silent. "I don't know everything yet." His voice cracked almost imperceptibly. "But I know this." He looked directly into the cameras. "If Ethan warned us, we failed to listen." I watched the interview without satisfaction, without triumph, only sadness. Recognition had arrived, but it had arrived through collapse. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Your father hid something only you can find. Riverside Storage. Locker 27. Come before they do." I looked at Marcus. He had already seen the message reflected in my screen. Neither of us spoke. We both understood the same thing. The next move had already begun. The storage facility sat at the edge of the river, where abandoned warehouses gave way to rusting shipping containers and cracked asphalt. Dawn had barely broken, leaving a pale gray light hanging over the water. Marcus parked 2 streets away. "We're being watched," he said quietly. "I know." Neither of us looked around. If someone was following us, acknowledging it would only confirm they had our attention. Locker 27 stood at the end of a narrow corridor lined with steel doors. Its old brass padlock looked untouched. I inserted the key that had been hidden inside my father's old watch, a watch I'd carried for 3 years without realizing its final purpose. The lock clicked open. Inside was a weathered wooden box. Nothing else. I lifted it carefully onto the concrete floor. Inside lay a leather journal, a bundle of notarized documents, and a small digital recorder. My father's handwriting covered the first page. "If you're reading this," I ran out of time. My chest tightened. Marcus stepped back, giving me space. I pressed play on the recorder. Static crackled for a moment. Then my father's calm voice filled the corridor. "Ethan, if fate allows you to hear this, then I was right." I closed my eyes. I discovered someone has been poisoning Grandridge from within. I don't know every name, but I know one thing with certainty. He paused to cough. I deliberately transferred certain ownership rights into a protected trust. The board believes they control the company. They don't. The final authority belongs to the trustee listed in the attached documents. I opened the notarized papers. My name. I stared at it in disbelief. Years ago, my father had quietly made me the ultimate controlling trustee, not to give me power, but to prevent anyone from stealing the company outright. No one had known. Not Adrian. Not the board. Not even me. Marcus exhaled slowly. "That's why Daniel couldn't finish. He needs these documents." "And now," Marcus replied, "he knows where they'll eventually surface." Almost on cue, the distant sound of tires screeching echoed outside. "We have company." Within minutes, police vehicles surrounded the storage facility. Not ordinary patrol cars. Financial Crimes Division. Their lead investigator stepped forward. "Mr. Cross." "Yes. I'm Inspector Naomi Carter." She showed her identification. "We've been trying to locate you." Marcus stiffened beside me. Inspector Carter continued. "We've reviewed the evidence submitted anonymously last night." "Lena," I murmured. She nodded. The documents changed everything. Her expression remained professional. "The investigation no longer considers you a suspect." Instead, she looked directly at the journal in my hands. "We believe someone is about to attempt recovering whatever your father left behind." As if summoned by her words, an officer shouted from outside. Black SUV leaving the east entrance. Inspector Carter's radio erupted with overlapping voices. "Units pursuing." The chase had begun. For the first time since resigning, I wasn't being hunted. The people hiding behind years of deception were. By afternoon, news spread across every major network. Authorities announced the investigation had shifted away from internal incompetence toward organized corporate fraud. Stock prices stopped falling. Employees gathered around televisions in stunned silence. At headquarters, Adrian watched the announcement alone inside the boardroom. Every empty chair reminded him of someone who had resigned or been suspended. Victor entered quietly. They've frozen Daniel Voss's accounts. Adrian nodded. No celebration. No relief. Only exhaustion. Victor hesitated. Ethan was telling the truth. Adrian looked down at the conference table where I had signed away everything only days earlier. No, he whispered. He stopped trying to tell us years ago. That evening, Grandridge's emergency shareholders meeting filled the auditorium beyond capacity. Reporters lined the walls. Employees packed every remaining seat. No one knew why the meeting had been called so suddenly. Marcus stood beside me backstage. You don't owe anyone a speech. I know. You don't owe them forgiveness either. I know. When my name was announced, a wave of whispers spread through the hall. Some faces showed relief. Others guilt. Others disbelief. I walked to the podium without hurry. No applause. No hostility. Only silence. Adrian stood and faced the audience. I have something to say before my brother speaks. He looked at me briefly, then turned back toward the crowd. For years, I believed leadership meant giving orders. His voice was rough. I believed Grandridge succeeded because our father built something too strong to fail. He swallowed. I was wrong. Another silence settled over the room. My brother carried burdens the rest of us never saw. He lowered his head, and when he finally put those burdens down, he looked around the auditorium. We blamed him instead of asking why. No one interrupted. Not one person. Adrian stepped away from the microphone. I resign as chairman. Gasps rippled across the hall. He removed his company badge and placed it on the podium. I'm not the person this company needs. He walked back to his seat without another word. I stood quietly for several seconds before opening my father's journal. I didn't come back for this company. The audience listened intently. I came back because the truth belongs to everyone who devoted honest years of their lives here. I lifted the journal. My father knew Grandridge was being infiltrated long before he died. I explained the hidden trust, the forged approvals, the shell companies, Daniel Voss, Charles Rowan, Lena's investigation. Every piece fit together. Evidence appeared on the large screens behind me. Bank transfers, emails, security footage, recorded conversations. No speculation, only facts. By the time I finished, many employees were openly crying. Not because they had lost money, because they realized they had spent years distrusting the wrong person. Suddenly, the rear doors burst open. Several officers escorted two handcuffed men inside. Daniel Voss, Charles Rowan. The room fell completely silent. Daniel's expensive suit was wrinkled. His composed smile had vanished. Inspector Carter addressed the gathering. Daniel Voss and Charles Rowan have been charged with conspiracy, corporate fraud, forgery, money laundering, and multiple related offenses. Daniel looked directly at me. For the first time, he appeared tired, not defeated by me, defeated by the weight of his own choices. You could have ruled this company, he said quietly. I shook my head. I never wanted to rule people. The officers led him away. No shouting, no dramatic struggle. Only the slow footsteps of a man whose carefully constructed world had finally collapsed under the truth he believed would never surface. The auditorium remained silent long after the doors closed behind him. The courtroom emptied more quietly than it had filled. For weeks, every hearing had drawn reporters, shareholders, and curious spectators hoping for another dramatic revelation. Instead, the final verdict came with measured words and stacks of evidence. Daniel Voss and Charles Rowan were convicted on multiple counts of corporate fraud, conspiracy, money laundering, forgery, and obstruction of justice. No outbursts, no last-minute confessions, just consequences. As people filtered into the hallway, I remained seated. I wasn't waiting for anyone. I was simply letting the silence settle. For years, every crisis had ended with another meeting, another emergency, another problem demanding my attention. Now, there was nothing left to solve. It felt unfamiliar. Lena sat beside me. You look disappointed. I smiled faintly. Do I? A little. I thought victory would feel louder. She looked toward the courtroom doors. Justice rarely is. We walked outside together. The rain that had followed this story from the beginning was finally gone. Sunlight reflected from the courthouse windows, warming the stone steps. A group of former Grandridge employees approached hesitantly. One of them, an elderly maintenance supervisor named Mr. Collins, stopped a few feet away. "I've worked there 26 years. I nodded. "I know." He lowered his head. "I believe what they said about you." His voice trembled. "I'm ashamed of that." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "You believe the information you were given. Still, if you spend the rest of your life punishing yourself for being deceived, then Daniel wins twice." Mr. Collins stared at me before his eyes slowly reddened. "Thank you." One by one, others stepped forward, not to praise me, not to ask favors, only to apologize. I accepted every apology the same way, with calm, not because the past no longer mattered, but because carrying it forever would only become another burden. 3 days later, the board formally requested a private meeting. Marcus attended. Lena attended. So did every remaining director. The atmosphere was entirely different from the last time I had entered that conference room. No arrogance, no whispered assumptions, only humility. The acting chairwoman slid a folder across the table. "We unanimously vote to restore your ownership rights." I didn't touch it. She continued. "We also ask you to become chairman." Silence followed. Every eye remained fixed on me. I finally opened the folder. The legal documents were flawless. Everything my father had protected could be returned with a single signature. I closed it again. "No." Confusion spread around the room. The acting chairwoman blinked. "You refuse." "I do." Adrian looked up slowly. "Ethan, I gave up everything because I refused to spend the rest of my life being the invisible foundation everyone stood on." No one argued. "I won't become that man again." The directors exchanged uncertain glances. "So what happens now?" I looked toward the windows overlooking the city. "You rebuild. And you?" "I'll help." Several expressions brightened. Then I finished the sentence. "As an independent advisor." The room became quiet again. No executive title. No permanent office. No authority over daily operations. If you truly learned something, I looked around the table, then the company shouldn't need saving by one person ever again. Marcus smiled. It was the first genuine smile I'd seen from him in years. 2 months passed. Grandridge Holdings slowly recovered, not because of miraculous profits, because ordinary people finally accepted responsibility. Departments communicated instead of competing. Financial approvals required genuine oversight. Independent audits became mandatory. No one person carried the entire weight anymore. Occasionally, the board invited me to review major strategic decisions. Sometimes I accepted. Sometimes I declined. No one questioned the answer. For the first time in my adult life, my calendar contained empty afternoons. At first, I didn't know what to do with them. Then Marcus solved that problem. "You spend your whole life fixing corporations." He handed me a brochure. "What about helping people before corporations break them?" The brochure belonged to a nonprofit leadership institute that trained young managers in ethical governance, financial transparency, and responsible leadership. I visited out of curiosity. I stayed because I recognized myself in many of the students. Brilliant, hardworking, convinced that sacrificing themselves was the only path to success. During one workshop, a young manager asked, "How do you become indispensable?" The room waited for my answer. I remembered endless nights in empty offices, family dinners I never attended, promises I postponed, a life measured by emergencies. I smiled gently. "You don't." The students looked puzzled. "The healthiest organization isn't the one that depends on one hero." I paused. "It's the one that keeps standing even when every individual goes home." Several people quietly wrote the sentence down. Later that evening, Lena found me locking the classroom. "You've changed." "So have you." She laughed. "I suppose surviving kidnappings changes people." "It usually does." She handed me a folder. "What is it?" "The foundation paperwork." Inside were legal documents establishing the Cross Initiative, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting whistleblowers, internal auditors, and employees who expose corruption inside organizations. I looked up. "You started this?" "We started this." I frowned. "I don't remember agreeing." "You will." She smiled for the first time in weeks. We're giving people the protection we never had. The idea settled comfortably inside me. Not another company, not another empire. A chance to make sure honest people didn't have to stand alone. I picked up the pen. This signature felt nothing like the one that had begun everything. That signature had been an ending. This one was a beginning. As we stepped outside, the evening sky glowed gold over the river. The city looked the same. I wasn't. For years, I believed my worth came from everything I carried. Now, I finally understood something my father had tried to teach me without words. A strong life isn't measured by how much you sacrifice. It's measured by what remains after you finally set the burden down. Autumn arrived quietly. The trees outside the Cross Initiative's headquarters had turned shades of amber and crimson, their leaves drifting across the courtyard in slow circles. Every morning, employees gathered over coffee before beginning another day of reviewing reports from whistleblowers across the country. No one rushed. No one shouted. Problems still existed. They were simply no longer treated as emergencies that one exhausted person had to solve alone. I stood by the conference room window as Marcus joined me. You've developed a habit. What habit? Looking out that window whenever you're thinking. I smiled. My father used to do that. Marcus nodded. He did. We watched volunteers arrive, carrying boxes of donated legal textbooks. After a long silence, Marcus spoke again. I've accepted retirement. I turned toward him. I thought you already had. I kept finding excuses. So did I. He laughed softly. I suppose we're both finally learning. He handed me a small envelope. My last responsibility. Inside was a single key. The old office? He nodded. I've cleared everything out. What about your books? I donated most of them. And the rest? They belong with someone who understands why laws matter. His words lingered long after he left. That afternoon, I unlocked his former office. Dust floated through shafts of sunlight. The shelves stood almost empty except for one leather-bound notebook. A note rested on top. For the days when you forget how far you've come. I opened it. Every page contained handwritten observations Marcus had made over the years. Not legal strategies. Not corporate advice. Moments. The day I quietly paid the salary of laid-off workers from my own savings. The afternoon I stayed overnight with an injured employee's family because they had no relatives nearby. The countless times I accepted blame to protect someone who had made an honest mistake. I had forgotten nearly all of them. Marcus hadn't. The final page read, "You always believed your greatest strength was enduring pain. It never was. Your greatest strength was refusing to pass that pain onto others." I closed the notebook slowly. For years, I had measured my life by everything I had lost. Marcus had measured it by everything I had quietly preserved. A week later, Grandridge Holdings held its annual shareholders meeting. For the first time in decades, I attended as nothing more than a guest. No reserved executive seat. No prepared speech. No responsibility. The new chairwoman, Elena Brooks, addressed the audience. Our strongest financial quarter in 5 years wasn't created by one brilliant executive. She looked across the room. It was created because thousands of ordinary people chose accountability. The audience applauded. She continued. Today, we also adopt the Ethan Cross Governance Charter. I blinked. I hadn't known. A large screen displayed its principles. No executive could approve major transactions alone. Independent audits would report directly to shareholders. Protected reporting channels would remain outside executive control. Mandatory ethics training for every manager. Transparent succession planning. The room stood in applause. Not for me, for the future. That mattered more. After the meeting ended, Adrian found me standing alone in the lobby. He looked healthier than he had in years. Not because life had become easier, because he had stopped pretending he could carry everything through authority alone. I've been meaning to ask you something. I waited. Do you think we'll ever be brothers again? His question lingered between us. Not dramatic, not desperate, simply honest. I considered it carefully before answering. We've always been brothers. He lowered his eyes. I wasn't acting like one. No, I kept comparing myself to you. I know. I thought if people admired you. He stopped. Then there would be less left for me. The confession sounded painfully ordinary. Not the words of a villain. The words of an insecure man who had spent years confusing love with competition. I should have listened. You weren't ready. I cost you 12 years. I shook my head. No. His brows furrowed. You didn't take 12 years from me. I looked through the glass doors where employees were leaving work, laughing with one another. I chose to stay. The responsibility belonged to both of us. He nodded slowly. Can we start again? I extended my hand. No. His expression fell. Then I smiled. We're too old to start again. Instead of shaking his hand, I pulled him into a brief embrace. We continue. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Some relationships couldn't return to what they once were. That didn't mean they couldn't become something healthier. Months later, the Cross Initiative celebrated its first anniversary. Hundreds of former employees, auditors, investigators, and students gathered beneath strings of warm lights in the courtyard. Lena stood at the podium. When we opened these doors, she said, people asked whether integrity could survive in the modern corporate world. She smiled toward the audience. It can. It simply needs people willing to protect it. Applause filled the evening air. Marcus, now fully retired, raised a glass of sparkling cider. To second chances earned through honesty. Everyone echoed the toast. I stepped away from the crowd for a moment and looked toward the river. The water flowed with quiet certainty, always moving forward, never trying to return upstream. I finally understood why giving up everything had never truly been a loss. The title, the office, the authority, those have been things I possessed, not who I was. What remained after I let them go? My principles, my compassion, my freedom, my father's trust, the people who chose truth over comfort. That was my real inheritance. Behind me, laughter drifted across the courtyard. Ahead of me, the river disappeared into the horizon. For years, I believed silence meant surrender. I had been wrong. Sometimes silence is the moment a person stops carrying what was never theirs to bear. Sometimes walking away is the first honest step toward a life that finally belongs to you. And sometimes the truth does not return to destroy your enemies. It returns to set you free.